What happens to cells when they don't get sufficient nutrients? They go through 5 stages of deterioration. Alzheimer's and dementias are examples of this problem because standard tests do not detect conditions until it's too late. These are the 5 stages of disease. So first you have a situation where you have less nutrients than you should, too much stress, too many toxins, so the cell gets hyperactive. Somehow or other the cell thinks, if I go faster, if I get really stressed and get going faster, somehow or other this will make it better. I'll be able to get more of something. But it's just not, that's just a reaction, so it doesn't really benefit you in any way. What we can do, though, is we can test that. What was one of the tests we talked about that can test this when diabetes is being tested? Glucose tolerance test. That's a test for when cells are stressed and not functioning properly. Have any of the women here used thermography? Thermography is a heat sensor. It's an infrared heat that can see if 200 cells in your breast are stressed. How many cells do you think mammograms need to see anything? 4 billion. How many years does it take for 200 cells that are stressed to become 4 billion that are recognized by a mammogram? 8 to 10 years. And that test, that mammogram test, is only 65% accurate. The thermography, which has no pain and no radiation, is 95% accurate. So what you have is a picture with a little white dot in it, which is a digital marker for where those 200 cells are. Now you go on your vegetarian diet, you exercise, you do medication, you do all the things, you take plant-based hormones, and guess what? In 3 months you do another thermographic screen and the little white dot is gone. Why
don't they use that? Why don't they test it?
Well, it's got 800 studies behind it, and all these doctors believe in it, and my wife has been doing it for 15 years, ever since I learned about it. She would never do a mammogram now. There are scientific studies that have shown that mammograms actually cause more cancers than they catch. Now, why would you want to do something that's causing more of a more cancer than actually preventing it?
Now we have like the 3D, which is probably worse, right? It probably puts more.
It's more accurate, but it probably puts more radiation in. Yeah. So I would have the talk with your doctor, or else I would go online and say thermography in Charleston or thermography in Columbia.
I've been supposed to go get a mammogram for like 2 years. I'm only 42, so and I just didn't.
Yeah, but see, cancer starts in your late 20s. This is the problem. Women say, well, I don't need to start till I'm in my 40s or my 50s. Why would you start then when the cancer is known to start in your late 20s? And that's when you can see the 200 cells. So you would be able to catch this 10 to 20 years sooner by getting the thermography done. And then there's natural things you can do to get rid of that, because it might have been caused by toxins, it might have been caused by stress or poor nutrition or a combination of those. Why would you want to be subjected to the pain and the radiation unnecessarily? More doctors are going to be doing it because we know that it works. And when you find something, a lot of doctors use an ultrasound to kind of back it up. The problem with ultrasound is they need 2 billion cells, half as many as mammograms, but still, if it's more than 200 cells, if it's a bigger mass than that, at least ultrasound can sometimes confirm that something's happening. But I still think thermography is the way to start. There's 2 things to do then. Which vitamin do you want to take? D3. At what level? 50 to 90, right? And you want to start, all your daughters and all your young women, they want to start their vitamin D at least in their 20s, all right? And they want to start doing thermography at least in their late 20s, because this is going to give them a heads up where they will probably eliminate. You can eliminate breast cancer by probably 90% by doing just the few simple things that we've been talking about. Is that not worth doing? To me it is. So if the cells become too stressed, too long, then they become weakened. That means they're vulnerable. That means they can't defend themselves. If they continue down this path and they become dysfunctional, this is where medicine sees most of the illnesses. High blood pressure, high glucose, high cholesterol. But that's 8 to 10 years too late. This is why we're getting this. That's why I started with this in the beginning when we were talking about the tests. The tests aren't good enough. If it's dysfunctional too long, then those cells will become mutated. If they become mutated, that means the nucleus is going to be scarred. So when you go to replace that cell, you're going to replace it with a mutated cell instead of a healthy cell. If it continues too long, then it's going to be diseased. So do you remember the example of the kidney disease? What percentage of dialysis patients were able to get off? 50%? 50% were able to get off. Well, here's the explanation for that. I do this at medical conferences, and I'm constantly amazed when I ask this question. I say to them, how many of you doctors think that you can do something to reverse that kidney disease? Can't do anything. You have to give a kidney replacement. I go, interesting. Because there's a clinical trial where they were able to, 50% were able to get off. No, that's not possible. That can't be done. Imagine this. If in that stressed area, 20% of the cells in a person's kidneys were stressed, 20% were weakened, 20% were dysfunctional, 20% were mutated, and 20% were diseased, could we probably get rid of using the mitochondria enhancer CoQ10? Could we get these cells back to normal? They're not mutated or diseased yet. All right, so we'll get rid of them. How about the weakened ones? Can we get them back? Sure. How about the dysfunctional ones? Okay, so now we're up to 60%. We can get probably half of those done because it takes 2 weeks to actually repair damage to the DNA. And the best thing to do that, by the way, is pomegranate juice. So when you add these two together, I just thought I'd throw that out there just to see how many people wrote that down. So now we've got 70% of the cells in the kidneys working. And I say to the doctors, could we get off dialysis now if we had 70%? Oh, probably could. So here for a free book, why did the other 50% not get off their dialysis? What was their profile? 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 70.
It's
different. You get different.
They were 50-50 in the diseased and...
Free book. All right. You cheated, Dan. You knew because I told you this yesterday. It's the free book. Because if you've got 50% that are diseased and 50% that are mutated, they're too far gone. There's no recovery possible. So you look at the doctors when you explain this and you go, yeah, I think I learned something about it in medical school in the first year. But, then we stopped paying attention to that kind of stuff. And I go, well, isn't that interesting? This is how it happened. This is a very simple equation. This is how cells work. So I just thought that was important because when we talk about this stuff, it's always good to have a dramatic example of how cellular deterioration happens and how it can actually be reversed. Would we rather have a situation where we didn't have the 20-20-20? Would we rather catch it when it was 100% here and stressed? Or 50% no stress and 50% stressed? That's what we want. And that's what these tests that we're going to tell you about, that's what they do. They find this stuff sooner.